She married Frank Hilly on May 8th, 1951, and they had two children, Mike and Carol. Despite Frank's well-paying job and Audrey's secretarial employment, the couple had little money set aside in savings due to Audrey's expensive spending habits, leading to tension within the marriage. Unbeknownst to Frank, his wife frequently engaged in inappropriate activities with her bosses in exchange for money or superior performance evaluations. Frank began suffering from a mysterious illness, as did his son Mike, but Mike's symptoms, which his doctors attributed to stomach flu, abruptly stopped when he moved away to attend a seminary. In 1975, after returning home early due to his illness, Frank found his wife Audrey in bed with her boss. He turned to Mike, then an ordained minister living in Atlanta, for advice. In May of 1975, shortly after a visit from Mike, Frank visited his doctor complaining of nausea and tenderness in his abdomen. Being diagnosed with a viral stomach ache, the condition persisted and he was admitted to a hospital where tests indicated a malfunction of the liver. Doctors diagnosed infectious hepatitis. Frank Hilly unfortunately passed away early in the morning of May 25th, 1975. Frank's autopsy, performed with his wife's permission, revealed swelling in his lungs and kidneys, bilateral pneumonia, and inflammation of the stomach. Because the symptoms closely resembled those of hepatitis, that was listed as his cause of death, and no further tests were conducted. Frank had maintained a moderate life insurance policy, secretly taken out by Audrey at the time of his initial illness, that she redeemed for $31,000, well, $31,140. 3 years later, Audrey took out $25,000 of a life insurance policy on her daughter, Carol. A $25,000 accidental death rider took effect in August of 1978. Within a few months, Carol, her own daughter, began experiencing nausea and was admitted to the emergency room several times. A year after filing the insurance policy on her daughter, Audrey gave her an injection that she claimed would take away the nausea. However, the symptoms only worsened, with Carol Carol's enduring numbness in her extremities. After medical tests found no disease, Carol's physician, fearing the symptoms were psychosomatic, had her undergo psychiatric testing at Caraway Methodist Hospital in Birmingham. There, Carol secretly received 2 more injections from her mother, who warned her not to tell others about the shots. A month after Carol was admitted to the hospital, her physician reported that she was suffering from malnutrition and vitamin deficiencies, adding that he suspected heavy metal poisoning was to blame for her symptoms. Panicking, Audrey and Carol discharged from the hospital that afternoon. The following day, Carol was admitted to the University of Alabama Hospital. Coincidentally, Audrey was arrested for check fraud. She was writing checks to the insurance company that insured Carol's life, causing that policy to lapse. University physicians concentrated their investigation on the possibility of heavy metal poisoning, noting that Carol's hands and feet were numb. She had nerve palsy causing foot drop and had lost most of her deep investigators found a note in the house reading, "Do not call the police. We will burn you out if you do. We found what we wanted and we will not bother you again." What does "we will burn you out" mean, guys? We will burn you out. Okay. 2 months later, on January 11th, 1980, Audrey was indicted in absentia for Frank's murder. Subsequently, investigators found that both her mother and her mother-in-law, Carrie, had significant but not fatal traces of arsenic in their systems when they died. Oh my goodness. The remains of Sonia Gibson, who was a little 11-year-old friend of Carol's, who had died of indeterminate causes in 1974, were also exhumed and examined, but were found to contain only a quote-unquote normal amount of arsenic. Sonia was one of the many neighborhood kids who had fallen ill after drinking beverages that they had been given during visits to the Hilly household. Whoa. 2 police officers who had been dispatched to a domestic disturbance at the Hilly household also reported coming down with nausea and stomach cramps after drinking coffee that Audrey had offered them. This woman was trying to take out the entire town. Jeez. Although police and the FBI launched a massive manhunt, Audrey Hilly remained a fugitive for a little more than 3 years. Whoa. Under the alias Robbie Hannon, Audrey traveled to Florida and met a man named John Holman. They lived together for more than a year before marrying on May 29th, 1981, at which point she took his last name. The couple then moved to New Hampshire. Late in the summer of 1982, she left New Hampshire, telling her husband that she needed to attend to family business and to see some doctors about an illness. During this time, she traveled to Florida and Texas using the alias Terry Martin, an imaginary twin sister. This is where it gets wild. During the trip, Audrey called John as her twin sister Terry and informed him that Robbie had died in Texas, saying there was no need for him to claim the body because it had been donated to medical science. After getting to know Terry over the phone, John expressed interest in meeting her. She agreed, saying that he needed to put Robbie's death behind them. In November of 1982, after changing her hair color and losing some weight, Audrey returned to New Hampshire and reunited with John, posing as his deceased wife's sister. I mean, come on, you can't make this up. It's not funny, but it's kind of funny. Jeez. And a bit Robbie Onan appeared in a New Hampshire newspaper, but aroused suspicion when police were unable to verify any of the information it contained. Homan's co-workers also had suspicions about his new sister-in-law and were concerned defalcation may have been at play. A detective with the New Hampshire State Police surmised that the woman living as Terry and Robbie were one and the same. Homan's concerned co-workers discovered that the Medical Research Institute of Texas, where Robbie's body was supposedly handed over for a study, was non-existent, as was the church that eulogized her death. While John's workplace was audited and no embezzlement found, authorities still believed that Terry Martin was possibly a bank robber named Carol Manning, which was later disproven, or wanted on other outstanding charges. In the meantime, Terry had taken a secretarial job in nearby Brattleboro, Vermont, and was arrested. While being interrogated by Vermont state troopers, she confessed that she was wanted in Alabama on check fraud charges and divulged her true name. Contact with Alabama authorities confirmed this, while also disclosing the far more serious charges for murder and attempted murder. Audrey was extradited to Alabama to stand trial. She was quickly convicted and was sentenced to life in prison for her husband's murder and 20 years for attempting to unalive her own daughter. Audrey began serving her sentence in 1983 at a maximum security prison. Due to her clerical career, she was often assigned to perform paperwork, and this was considered a quiet model prisoner. This good behavior earned her one-day passes from prison, from which she returned as scheduled. I had no idea these one-day passes existed. In February of 1987, Audrey was given a 3-day pass to visit John, poor guy, who had moved to Anniston to be closer to his wife. They spent a day at an Anniston motel, and when John left for a few hours, she disappeared, leaving behind a note asking for his forgiveness. John promptly alerted the police. Her escape prompted an inquiry into Alabama's furlough policy. 4 days after she vanished from the motel, I'm surprised she wasn't given an ankle bracelet, an ankle monitor or something, not an ankle bracelet. 4 days after she vanished from the motel, Audrey was found delirious on the back porch of a house in Anniston. The woman who found Audrey described her appearance as scary, stating she was dirty with mud on her face and long fingernails. She alerted police Drenched by 4 days of frequent rain and exposed to temperatures that dropped to around freezing, her final cause of death was attributed to hypothermia and exposure. Wow. This woman, Audrey, clearly a psychopath. I kind of feel bad for John, but then I don't, because how do you fall for something? Well, I don't like to ask this question because you never know his state of mind and whatever, but how did he believe that that was really her twin sister and didn't have any proof of his wife's death, or even look into it any further as to verify that her body was actually donated to medical science? Okay, how are you married to somebody and their sister tells you that they died and there's no follow-up to that? You just take their word as Bible. It just sounds bizarre to me. I'm actually wondering if he did know the truth, because that just sounds a bit too bizarre. Yeah, this woman had no limits. I mean, she tried to delete everybody. Delete the town. Her own daughter. I'm interested in Carol. I tried to look up some interviews with Carol, but apparently it's not available here in France for me to look at. But, you know, when the doctors were testing her to see what was wrong with her, I'm guessing, because my first thought was, why didn't she just tell them that her mom injected her with something to help them figure out what's wrong with her, because she's the one experiencing these symptoms. She's the one that might be close to death. Speak up. But then again, I'm thinking, as a child at that time, she may have experienced a lot of fear with her mom. There are some things that she saw or were told that put some fear into her. Dealing with the mom like that, which is so sad, to not have control over your own body, your own health, and your mom is literally trying to take your life. You've lost